what I want to share with you in this brief video are some musings about connecting with this point on the solar wheel where we're sitting right now in mid-Aquarius at the Aquarian Cross-Quarter, known by many names, the spark of the new year in the Northern Hemisphere. So when I'm desiring to connect deeply with the meaning of the season, 4 things. I start with nature, with my place on the planet, the genius loci, how I am embedded in the land, what's happening around me, what are the animals and the plants, the skies and the weather doing? What is the nature of this time of year around me? What am I seeing? What is waking up is the big question that we ask at this turning into spring. The second place that I turn is memory. So this is the self-study piece of it, where we get to look back over our own solar cycles and begin to understand those repetitions. I just looked up out of my window and there's migrating swans flying over. Those are the migration of the swans is one of the potent occurrences and symbols of this time of year for me in this place in the world on Vancouver Island. And I haven't seen any for a few days, and I just looked up talking to you, and there's beautiful, about 7 of them, swans flying over. Seven swans of flying. So nature, connecting with the natural world and what it is communicating with you. What are the animals saying to you? What are the winged ones saying? And then memory, connecting to our own cycles, going back in time over those solar repetitions, those annual repetitions, anniversaries, and thinking about what is the nature of the experiences that this time of year has held for me. Is there a thread? Is there a theme? Nature, memory. Of course, another way to connect with cycles, if you know your own astrological chart, you can look and see what's happening here around mid-Aquarius or over on the other side, mid-Leo, to understand what's waking up within you in the bigger picture of your soul's path. And also, how is this in relation to your natal sun? Where in her journey are we? So nature, memory, the chart, and of course, the 4th place where we resource ourselves to feel deeply into a seasonal turning is the stories that belong to us as a human family. The stories of our own family and our own cultural lineage. And expanding beyond that, looking at a bigger horizon and understanding the stories that have attached themselves, that have clustered around this turning across cultures and throughout history. So I've spent a lot of time over the last month or so really immersing myself in this Aquarius cross-quarter. What does it mean? What's the folklore? What's the poetry? What is the art that has clustered around this season? What is the meaning of this season? Can we find something universal, or at least universal to our hemisphere, universal to that spring turning? And there's a poignancy and precariousness to this moment of the year. It's a time of emergence, and all times of emergence carry doubt and hope, vulnerability and excitement. There's that feeling of something new emerging into the world, the softness of it, the naivete of it, the vulnerability of it, but also the potent strength in its potential. So there's lots of ideas and feelings that cluster around that this time of year. Most of the poetry that I read about this time of year. There are lots of Candlemas poems. Walked that edge between life and death and spoke to the poignancy of emerging life and how with the emergence of life comes fear and doubt and awareness of all the possibilities. So, touching in with the human story, what have other humans in our great human family experienced, felt, thought, created around this time of year? What rituals, what works of art? What are our own memories? What does our own chart say? And what is the natural world around us saying? So for me, I was born in May. So this turning is my last solar quarter. And the energy of that has held true for me. It's often a difficult choice point and a time of waning vital energies for me. Also a time of potency and excitement. The last quarter is both a culmination and a kind of exhaustion or crisis point. It can be one or the other. And it has been an interesting reflection for me to look back over the years and see the kinds of experiences that have clustered around this turning, this solar turning for me in my life. My daughter was conceived in December, as most babies are. So being in the thick of that first trimester during the Aquarius season is a vivid memory for me. And that weaves into the human story as well, because so many of us do conceive in December. I have a beautiful memory of coming out to a new community, being invited to dance at an Imbolc festival, coming in wreathed and robed in black and turning and spinning throughout the dance until I revealed a flame-like costume underneath, a dance in honor of Brigid. So there's creativity woven in to my year at this time too, an idea of coming out of that shroudedness of winter into a new spark and a new flame, which is something that I'm sure you're experiencing somewhere in your life. Have some life and death experiences clustered around this time of year for me, and some potent choices. So it was interesting for me to reflect back on those potent memories and what might be the common thread between them for me in my last solar quarter. So I've given you space in the play sheet to reflect on that and bring some memories up from your story about potent things that have happened to you over the years at this time, and see whether or not there's a common thread, and see if you can find a theme that resonates with the bigger story of this time of year. A lot of our nature folklore around this time of year comes from Northern Europe, from the British Isles. And there's some really evocative imagery around this time of year that comes from those traditions. There's the whole thing about lambing. If we think about the ancient or not so ancient, even agrarian cultures of the British Isles and Northern Europe, how important that flock of sheep was for so many, how the life of the community and the family depended on them. This brings the reality to some of the symbolism that we see with this time of year of sheep and lambs, of milk, because this was the time of year of lambing and when the milk first let down in the ewes. So it was also a time when scarcity of food, there may not have been a lot in the pantry, and that first fresh milk and fresh cheese must have been something so celebratory. Just imagine that a couple months go by since the feasts of December, and there's not enough food left in the larder. We don't have that much that's fresh, and the milk comes in. So how delicious, how beautiful, what a celebration of life. But also with lambing, there's that precariousness again of these little vulnerable creatures being born into the snow, and how the health of the family and the community depend on the success of this agricultural pursuit. And this gives some resonance to all this work with weather augury, trying to predict the weather. We still have a remnant of this in Groundhog Day, right? And thinking about the importance of this. How soon was spring going to come? How soon were those lactating sheep going to be able to go out and graze and not eat the grain that we had so carefully stored up? So that weather augury was a matter of life or death. We joke about it now, does the groundhog see his shadow? But when life depended on it, following those cues from the animal world, from the awakening from hibernation, whether or not it was happening, cued you as to whether you should give all the rest of your grain to those lactating ewes or wait a little while and conserve what you have. So I think this gives real resonance to all of those ideas and those symbols that cluster around what was called Imbolc in the Celtic world, of sheep, animals, milk, nursing, lactation, and the symbolism of milk, and also the idea of protection, right? The protective goddess Bridget, how she watches over the flock and watches over the family and protects from predators and protects from disease. This was all really important life or death stuff. So we see how these symbols started to cluster together, the making of talismans like the Bridget's cross to protect the family, to protect the animals. It's a precarious time of year, a precarious time of new life. Even deeper into our human history, there's a resonance in this holiday of acknowledging the predator-prey cycle, and when we were living more closely with that cycle, the importance of having relationship with predatory animals. And this is interestingly reflected in Bridget being both the protector of the flock and the protector of wolves. So there's a mystery there, I think, to penetrate about the predator-prey cycle and that cycle of life or death, and the importance of ecological balance, and how the protector of the vulnerable is also the protector of end of life and the importance of that cycle. So we have this coming together of end of life and beginning of life. We have ideas of birth, lactation, and death. We have the first subtle sprouting of the seeds coming up. We have decisions to make about how to use our resources and how much time is left to use the resources from winter before the spring presents us with new resources. That's an interesting one, I think, to reflect on, just as far as our psychological health, and for those of us that feel that lack of light as a lack of resourcing and are kind of pushed back on ourselves by a little bit of sad, to think about how much longer will I have to find the sun within and resource myself there. So lots of stories, and I'll share some resources below. I want to share some paintings here on the side. I want to share some poetry. And I invite you to reflect on a few things for yourself. I invite you to reflect on what is awakening from hibernation within you. What has been dormant that is now waking up? I invite you to reflect on what feels vulnerable and new and worthy of protection. I invite you to ponder how that vulnerability shifts your perception of mortality, and how this moment helps you to integrate that shadow of mortality and work with the possibilities, both of beautiful potential growth and of the wasting and loss of things, because those are both part of the cycle that we see at this time of year. And I invite you to ritualize or ceremonialize this time of year by anointing a candle. We're going to be doing this together. There's a great tradition of candle work and candle magic that is associated with this time of year, both in the Christian tradition and various Northern European pagan traditions. The relighting of the fires, the lighting the flame of dedication, the warming of the hearth, and the reignition of the spirit. We'll see full ignition with the Aries ingress in April. But what we're doing right now is lighting a candle in the darkness. So what is it that you want to reignite at this time of year? So just in closing, it's such a poignant and precious and precarious time of year. If you're having that whole spectrum of feelings from despair to hope, that's such a normal part of the story of this time of year. If you're feeling vulnerable, also a normal part of the story of this year. If you're feeling reborn and excited, that's a quality of this time of year. You can sacralize this for yourself by looking at what's waking up in your ecosystem, both within you and outside of you in nature, or even in the human world around you. And together we can borrow one of those beautiful ancient symbols of this time of year and consecrate, make sacred a candle for ourselves to honor the flame that is lighting within each of us as we embark on this journey. I have so much more that I could say about this holiday from all the research that I've done. But what I wanted to do was ignite your curiosity and encourage you to explore within and without, and backwards and forwards in time, to find meaning in this turning for yourself.